Hello and welcome to Wisdom Forge. How learning reshapes the human brain, a journey through the mind. When athletic talent doesn't transfer. Despite being known as one of the greatest basketball players ever, a world-famous athlete once stepped away from basketball to pursue a long-held dream of playing professional baseball. However, despite his outstanding physical abilities and success on the basketball court, his baseball journey was far from impressive. He struggled throughout a single full season, finishing with a batting average barely over .200 and committing numerous errors. His performance was so lacking that he couldn't even move up to a more advanced team within the league. This surprising failure showed that even world-class physical skills in one sport don't automatically translate to another. Meanwhile, another sportsman was thriving on the baseball field, making incredible catches and setting impressive batting records during the same time. The contrast between these two athletes highlighted an important truth: different types of physical abilities are closely tied to how each brain connects with and controls the body. This connection is not uniform, it's specialized. And understanding that specialization requires a deeper look at how the brain is wired and how learning reshapes it. How experience shapes the brain's connections. One of the most astonishing facts about the brain is that it is not fixed in its structure. Each time we learn something new, whether simple or complex, our brain physically changes. A prominent scientist was the first to prove that learning even a small fact can change the structure of our brain cells. These changes aren't just temporary, they involve actual physical transformations of the neurons. Neurons can grow, form new connections, and strengthen old ones. Learning is, quite literally, the process of rewiring the brain. This concept is not limited to humans. It applies to a wide range of creatures, from sea slugs to mammals, all of whom learn in surprisingly similar ways. The realization that neurons are constantly adapting to new experiences has completely changed how we understand the brain. It suggests that every moment of learning leaves a lasting physical imprint, reshaping the way we think and act. Early clues from animal brains. Long before modern neuroscience confirmed these ideas, early scientists began noticing patterns in animal brains. One 18th century researcher trained birds to perform complex tasks and then examined their brains. He discovered that the birds who had been trained had more intricate brain structures than those who hadn't. Later, the famous theory of evolution added another clue. Observations showed that wild animals, who constantly face challenges and must learn to survive, have brains that are larger and more complex than their domesticated counterparts. The difficult environment forced them to stay alert and learn constantly, which shaped their brain development. The same principle applies to humans. Our experiences and surroundings directly influence the way our brains grow and connect. Learning is not just a mental activity, it leaves visible marks on our brain's physical structure. Musical brains and how they change. One of the clearest examples of how experience shapes the brain can be found in musicians. For instance, in the brains of violin players, the areas that control fine hand movements are visibly more developed on the side that handles the strings. These regions appear larger and more complex because of constant practice. Meanwhile, the brain areas that control the hand drawing the bow show far less development. This uneven growth shows that the brain adapts specifically to the tasks it is asked to perform. Just like muscles grow and adapt with use, brain regions expand and change depending on how often and how intensely they are used. This proves that our daily activities don't just affect what we know, they also reshape the very structure of our brains. The power of cells behind the scenes. At the core of all this brain activity are the tiny building blocks of life, cells. Every living organism, from the simplest bacteria to the most complex human, is made up of cells. These tiny structures work tirelessly in the background, managing nearly everything we experience, feel, or do. Most of the skin we present to the world is made up of dead cells, while the living cells beneath handle protection, sensation, and healing. The internal structure of each cell resembles a fried egg, with a jelly-like outer part and a central core, or nucleus. Inside that nucleus is an incredible molecule called DNA, which holds the instructions for everything about us: our height, how we respond to stress, and much more. The DNA is packed so tightly that fitting it into a microscopic space is like squeezing dozens of miles of thread into a small capsule. And how this DNA is folded inside the cell determines what kind of cell it becomes: a skin cell, a liver cell, or a brain cell. Building a brain cell from DNA. What turns a simple cell into a brain cell is the way the DNA is arranged. Different folding patterns of the DNA activate different sets of instructions, allowing the cell to specialize. A brain cell, also called a neuron, has a unique shape. It looks a bit like a tree, with a cluster of roots on one end and smaller branches on the other, connected by a long, thin trunk. The root area contains the nucleus and is called the cell body. The small roots are known as dendrites, which receive incoming messages. The long trunk is the axon, which sends messages to other cells. The end of the axon splits into smaller branches called terminals. These terminals communicate with other neurons, and together they form the network that allows us to think, feel, and learn. A journey through the learning brain. To truly understand how the brain works when we learn, imagine being shrunk down to a microscopic size and exploring a neuron up close. This neuron is located in the hippocampus, a special area deep in the brain responsible for converting short-term memories into long-term ones. From this tiny viewpoint, the brain looks like a glowing forest, with tree-like neurons lighting up as electric signals pass through them. Every so often, chemical bursts emerge from the ends of these neurons. These are the brain's messengers, sent to carry information to the next neuron. The outside of these trees is coated in a slick, oily substance that allows the signals to pass efficiently. Inside, a complex framework supports the cell's shape, but it's always moving and changing, just like the learning process itself. Communication between brain cells. Between each neuron lies a small gap called a synapse. This is where chemical messengers, known as neurotransmitters, travel from one cell to another. When a neuron gets an electric signal, it releases these chemicals into the synapse. The next neuron detects them and decides whether to pass the message along or not. If it does, it sends its own signal and the process continues. If it doesn't, it temporarily shuts down, ignoring the signal. Once the message is delivered, the chemicals are pulled back into the original cell, a process called reuptake, so they can be reused. This cycle happens millions of times every second in our brains. It's how we learn, remember, and make decisions. Watching the brain learn in real time. As we observe these neurons in action, something remarkable becomes clear. The ends of neurons grow, change shape, and even split into new branches. These changes are not random, they are signs that learning is taking place. When we gain new information or practice a skill, our brain's wiring updates itself. The speed of these electric signals is astonishing, reaching up to 250 miles per hour. As messages fly back and forth, the brain is constantly reshaping itself, creating new pathways and connections. What we are witnessing is not just brain activity, it's the process of learning itself. We are watching the human brain change in response to experience, a true miracle of nature. Thank you, and let's stay connected. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery. If you found this video valuable, imagine what you'll learn next. Subscribe to Wisdom Forge and hit the bell icon so you never miss more thought-provoking content, practical wisdom for everyday life, the tools to unlock your full potential. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway or what topics you'd like to see next. Until next time, keep growing, keep learning.